Hiya, my name is Matt, and this is my channel, Beer, Wood, Bigfoot, Ghost, where I talk about anything that has to do with one of those four subjects: beer, wood, Bigfoot, ghosts. These are things I think about, these are things I research, these are things I do, these are things that keep me up at night. All right, today's a beer episode. More specifically, we're going to talk about the great pubs I visited and the great beer I drank in a recent epic trip to Scotland. My wife and I were there for about 9 days. We started into the Highlands and made our way all the way down to Edinburgh. Met some great people, visited some great pubs, drank some great beers during that time. But before I get started on that and I describe all those pubs and beers, let's talk about two things. First, what am I wearing? I'm wearing a Mysterious Brews. Let me see if I can get a little better shot of that. There's a close-up. That's Mysterious Brews podcast. Two guys from Georgia sitting down in a dark, dank basement talking about all things that have to do with mysteries, whether that's supernatural, missing person cases, unsolved mysteries, homicides, you name it, and a little bit about their friend Bigfoot. There he is, Bigfoot. And now what am I drinking? I'm going to drink, in honor of today's video, right? This is about Scottish beers. This is Belhaven. So this is a Belhaven Scottish ale. I drank a lot of Belhaven when I was over there. I did not drink this particular beer, so let's give it a first taste. And I'm going to drink it out of a glass from 2 Ton Brewing Company. That's up in Kenilworth, New Jersey. They are a great family-run brewery. Really good beer, really great people. If you're ever up in central New Jersey, stop in 2 Ton Brewing. There it is, in Kenilworth, New Jersey. All right, let's pour this beer off. Right away, you can just see it's got beautiful color. Yeah, really nice color. The head retention, a little bit there. It looks a little murky, a little cloudy. That's going to clear itself up, I think. Again, this is an import, right? It comes in from overseas, so it's always going to be a little different than buying something craft brewed domestically, what have you. Let's give it a smell. Right away, you can pick up kind of a malt sweetness, a little bit of a coffee, but mainly like a caramel kind of sweet smell. Yeah, nice. Not a wee heavy. I think this comes in at 5.2% alcohol, which is fairly mild. And that's something I found about all the Scottish beers I had over there. Outside of one, they were pretty much around that 5% or lower type of beer range in all the pubs I went to, in all the different beers I tried, which, being a craft beer person here in the U.S., that's a little different for us, right? My sweet spot's around 6%. Had a lot of doubles, a lot of imperials and things that run up in the 8s and 9s. Most good hazy New England style IPAs, even West Coast style IPAs, are running probably in the 6 to 7.5 range. But most of the beer I drank in Scotland was in that 5% or lower. In fact, I think you saw a lot of people drinking 4% beer over there. So anyways, another sip. Yeah, that's nice. As you would expect from a Scotch ale, you've got a kind of a sweet maltiness from that, and a low bitterness. And I looked at their website for Belhaven, and they said they're actually, this could be considered a wee heavy, but generally, in my experience of Scottish ale, that's a wee heavy, is like 8% plus. Anyways, nice drinking beer. Set that down while we get on to it. All right. Here we go. We're going to talk about those pubs I visited and the beers I drank. And let's start with where our trip started, up in Inverness, which is in the Highlands or the northern part of Scotland. So my wife and I arrived in Inverness after a long day of travel. You know, you do that overnight thing, you got the 5-hour time zone difference, that sort of thing. So I'd already picked out a pub that I wanted to go on that first night, and it was called McGregor's. McGregor's had great reviews online, so like that's where we're heading. It was a very short walking distance from our hotel. So we went over to McGregor's, and it was packed. What was this? This was a Saturday night, and it was just, the place was packed. There were people outside in 50 degrees, semi-rainy weather, and the tap room or inside pub area was also packed as well. And my wife and I did what we always do if you walk into a pub, especially like a German-style beer hall, is not be shy. If you see a table with a couple at it, or maybe a foursome, and there's a couple extra seats, you just walk right up. So we did that very thing. We walked right up to that table. We asked them if we could sit down. We were going to get some dinner, and I offered to buy them a beer. They took us up on the offer. And then we spent, I think, 4 hours there drinking several beers, talking to these two. They were from Germany on holiday. And also these two lads, and you're going to see a video here that I'm going to show. These two local lads came in wearing Team USA shirts, which we had to ask, why are you wearing Team USA shirts? And they had this university friend golf tournament thing they do every year. It's kind of like their version of the Ryder Cup. So somebody's always Team USA and somebody's a European team. And we partied with these guys all night. It was great. The beers that I drank there, the first one I had right out of the box was from Cromarty Brewing Company, which is about 20 miles outside of Inverness. And the name of the beer was Happy Chappy Pale Ale. It comes at about 4.1% alcohol, about 30 IBUs in the bitterness scale. It was made, interestingly enough, with both U.S. and New Zealand hops, and it had nice citrus notes. It was crisp, well-balanced, and a great example of a very sessionable beer, right? 4%. And I think I lost count after a while how many of those I had. It was a great beer. Great beer, great time. You see there's some music here that I'm playing. And so I had that Cromarty Brewing Company Happy Chappy Pale Ale. And then we started with our tour group the next day, and there was an organized dinner for the group, so we went back to McGregor's, which, hey, that's fantastic. And that evening, I drank a couple of Cairngorm, and I'll put the name below here, Cairngorm Brewing, which is located in Aviemore, about 54 miles outside of Inverness. And it was their Black Gold Traditional Scottish Stout. And it was delicious. Came in at 4.4% alcohol. It was nutty, roasty. It was sweet, but had kind of a dry finish, which I really much enjoy. Great beer. I had a couple of those that night. Great meal with the people who were there. I'll show you a little bit of the music that we heard that was being played at our group dinner. And McGregor's. If you're ever in Inverness, most definitely go to McGregor's. All right, next one we're going to talk about is the Kings Highway Pub. Our first night in, the hotel we were staying with for the tour wasn't available, so we stayed across the street, I mean directly across the street, at a really nice little hotel that had a pub below it called the Kings Highway. And I think there were people on the street partying until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Man, it was loud. And I'm trying to figure out why that particular pub was so popular. Well, the next day we walked in over lunch. I figured, hey, we'll get a beer. I'm looking for a cask ale, by the way. If you've watched some of my previous videos, you know I'm a cask ale type of guy. I'm looking for that beer engine, right? I walked in, I found out the reason why it was so popular, the beer was cheap. You could get a pint poured for about $3.50 U.S. equivalent. Of course, you're paying in British pounds, but it's about $3.50 in our money, and a great deal. So the beer I had was the Abbott Ale. Came in at 5% ABV. This ale that is made by Green King Brewing, which is in Aberdeen, about 100 miles kind of south and east from Inverness. That beer has been brewed pretty much in the same consistency since 1951. So it must be a popular beer over there. It was good. It was a little flat. Again, it's being poured off casks, so you don't expect it to be very carbonated. But I think this keg may have been there for a little bit or what have you. But the beer was good. It was rich and malty, had a nice biscuit background, very low bitterness, which is kind of what you think from an amber or that type of beer. And I think that's what this really was an amber ale. Good enough, though, to drink a couple of them. And we had a great time at the Kings Highway. Again, now we're moving across the street to that hotel, and that same night, it was loud. There were kids out in the street. Yeah, it was loud. So if you're ever in Inverness and you want a cheap beer, go over to Kings Highway. So night 3 in Inverness, we went to a place called the Castle Tavern, which is up by an old area where there were some previous ruins of a castle, which have been modernized quite a bit and what have you. It seemed like the history was a little sketchy to me when it was being described to me. But the Castle Tavern is really cool. Walked up to the bar, and they had 5 beers, I believe, on cask, and right in my element with that. I walk in, I'm standing there no less than 10 seconds, and a guy sitting on a stool at the bar, local guy, very strong Scottish accent, starts talking. And it was hard. I had to give him all my attention to understand what he was saying. But he recommended a beer that I did end up having from Orkney Brewing Company. And if you know anything about Scotland, there's a whole series of island chains to the north and west of the main proper part of Scotland. And this Orkney Brewing is on Orkney Islands. And that's about 151 miles outside of where we were staying in Inverness. I had the Sunstone Pale Ale, and it was on cask. Got a great pour, great beer came to me. This beer came in at 4.4% ABV, 30 IBUs, so low bitterness on the scale. It had definite notes of orange. You could smell it right away, the aroma, when you put it to your nose. You get the orange, almost like orange peel. And there's a difference between when you smell an orange and an orange peel, right? Because the orange peel's got a little bit of an astringency to it or something. I don't know if I'm describing that right, but that's what I picked up on. But I thought the Sunstone Pale Ale was good. I had a couple of those. You're going to see some footage. I've probably been playing in the background here of the pub. If you're in Inverness, so let's wrap it up. Inverness, Scotland, Highlands area, definitely check out McGregor's Pub. Make that your first and your last place if you want. It is really good. And I thought the Castle Tavern was great as well. But if you're looking for a very economical meal and some cheap beer, go over to the Kings Highway Pub. All right, let's now move on to the Perthshire area. So our tour went from the north, Inverness. As we worked ourselves south and east a little bit, we got to the Perthshire area, where we stayed at a local hotel, and that's what we're going to talk about next. All right, let's take another little sip of that Belhaven Scottish Ale. Okay, so we're leaving Inverness, and we're on our way down to the Perthshire area to a hotel called the Hotel Loch Rannoch. Hotel Loch Rannoch. And Loch in Scottish, I think it's Gaelic is the language, means lake. So, have you ever heard of Loch Ness? Right, it means Lake Ness. And of course, we did a little tour on Loch Ness. We were there for about 45 minutes on a boat, which is not part of this video, but I should say I never saw Nessie. All right. So we made our way down to the Hotel Loch Rannoch, and on the way there, we stopped at a couple places. We stopped at the Glenmoray Distillery in Speyside, Scotland. Glenmorangie is a Scottish whiskey distillery. It's been there since 1897. And even though I normally just talk about beer, you can't go to Scotland without talking about their Scotch whiskey, right? Great tour, great place to visit. They had a barrel room where they're aging a 150-year whiskey. And right now we're at year 143, so in 7 years they're going to release that. When you're done with the tour, they take you into their tap room, and I had two different Scotch whiskeys. I had a cognac cask whiskey, and I had a peated malt. So just like a lot of wine and beer, you age your Scotch whiskey in something. In this case, they use cognac barrels, right? That were used, that they bought out there, and so that imparted kind of that strong port wine cognac type of flavor to the Scotch. And then they had a peated malt one, which I think during this distilling process, they used peat moss in there, and that gave off a really kind of grassy type of taste. Didn't care for that much at all. But that was, when you go over there, you have to have a wee dram. They call it a wee dram, or at least try the whiskey. So we did that. It was great. It was fun. And my wife, who doesn't drink at all, actually tasted a little bit of it just for the experience. So while heading between Inverness and down to that Perthshire area where the hotel was, we stopped in at this historical site called the Battle of Culloden. And this goes back to kind of a Scottish independence situation battle with then England before the two countries were united under Great Britain. Really, really impressive battlefields. The tour was great. But while there, we had a few minutes, stopped in a cafe. One of the guys on the tour had bought a Sky Brewing Sky Gold Golden Ale in a bottle, poured me a little bit of it, and it was exceptional. Really enjoyed that beer. Sky Brewing is in the Isle of Skye, which is about 130 miles outside of that Perthshire area. Came in at 4.3%, 32 IBUs, and it was it had a nice bitterness to it, right? Even though the IBUs listed on their site for this were fairly low, I think it came in around 40, it actually imparted more bitterness, which was the first time in that 3-4 days I actually had a beer that had a nice bitterness backbone to it. And so that was really good. That's Sky Gold Golden Ale, sold in a bottle at this cafe at the Battle of Culloden battlefields. So now we make our way down into Perthshire, and we're going to stay at that hotel, the Loch Rannoch Hotel, and you're right on this loch, this huge lake, and there's no place to go. So we basically were there for 2 days. Our dinners were there. We go out during the day and tour and what have you, but we'd always come back to the hotel. Lovely, lovely place. Really good food. And so here are the beers that I tried there. These were all poured off of CO2. There were no cask ales available here. So the first beer I had was Bitter and Twisted Golden Ale from a brewery called Harvesttown Brewery in Alva, Scotland, which is about 144 miles from the area we were at. 4.2% ABV. It had a nice citrus note, both in the aroma on the nose and both in the taste. It was very crisp. I liked it. It was exceptional. I had 2 of those that night with dinner, and I really enjoyed that. That was Bitter and Twisted Golden Ale from Harvesttown Brewery. Now, the next night, I went into what's called McEwen's Original Scotch Ale. Okay, so it's something similar to what I'm drinking now here, the Belhaven Scottish Ale, but this is by McEwen's, which was originally located in Edinburgh, the brewery, and it's now owned by Carlsberg, Barston. You know, it's a big beer conglomerate worldwide. This Original Scotch Ale from McEwen's came in at 4.2% ABV. It had a nice sweet caramel and roasted malt flavor to it, as you expect from a Scotch ale. And it had a nice little bitterness in the background, so I enjoyed that. To me, a really, really good beer is something that balances off malt flavors with bitterness, right? And so I really enjoyed that beer. I'd bring 2 or 3 that night. It was great. Really, really good beer. I'm going to see if I can find that domestically. McEwen's Original Scotch Ale, sweet caramel, roasted malt flavors, and again, that nice bitterness, which I enjoyed very much. So that was it at the hotel. Basically bellied up to the bar and ordered those beers. All right, now we're going to move to Edinburgh, not Edinburgh. So apparently it's pronounced, if you're local, Edinburgh or Edinburgh. So here we go. We're going down to Edinburgh. Okay, the pubs and beers of Edinburgh. All right, we stayed at a hotel right at the base of this castle that goes back to, I think, like 1100. And it's built on top of this giant hill slash mountain made of all stone. We're right below it. And at the base, adjacent on the street where we were staying in our hotel, is a place called the Grassmarket area. And I did a little research about where I wanted to go. And the first place we went was the Beehive Inn. Beehive Inn. Interestingly enough, there's been one restaurant slash pub in that location for nearly 400 years. And there's some actual classic Scottish novels and literature that mentions the Beehive Inn back to the early 1800s. So that's how old this place is. Beautiful little pub, lively. First night we're there, we walk in and there's a stag party. They call it stag, we call it bachelor's party. Guy wearing a diaper and wearing a bib and nothing else. Some loud friends with him. But they had cask ale. So I went up to the bar and the first thing I got was their best bitter. So this is Beehive Inn's best bitter. And I found out it was brewed by Belhaven, right? Same thing we're drinking now, that same brewery, Belhaven. There it is. Got to get better at putting this can up here. And the best bitter is great. This particular Belhaven brewery is in what's called East Lothian, about 20 miles outside of Edinburgh. And apparently Belhaven is the oldest still active brewery in Scotland. Which is pretty cool. And it was established in 1719. So the best bitter they had was kind of a traditional English bitter. It did have a nice bitterness in the back of it. It came in at 3.9% ABV. Again, very low. Had nice head lacing, right? So they're pouring the cask off. They let it sit for a little bit. Pour some more. And as you drink this beer, you can see the lacing coming down the glass, which I really enjoy. That tells me that the beer is being poured well and is holding up well. It did have a nice bitterness backbone, but not in your face, right? So not like a lot of English bitters I've had where they're kind of like West Coast style American IPAs where they kind of hit you in the head, like Stone Brewing Company. Love Stone, by the way, but that'll get you right away with the bitterness. But this was great. It was really good. So that was at the Beehive Inn. Great people there. The staff is very friendly. The ambiance of the pub is really cool, and the food was really, really good as well. So I also then tried a Lone Goose Hoppy Golden Ale on cask from a brewing company called Strangers Brewing Company, which is fairly new. They were established in 2021 as a craft brewer, and they're located in Linlithgow, Scotland. Linlithgow, Scotland. Came in at 4%. Again, they're real low ABVs over there, right? And I think that's more about enjoying people's company and consuming a lot of beers, right? Versus having 1 or 2, people are consuming 5 or 6, low ABV. That beer I thought was great. It was easy drinking, it was straightforward, it was crisp. It had a nice fruitiness to it. And I would imagine that was imparted by the yeast that was used. I went to the website. I couldn't find out anything about their yeast or even the malt profile on this, you know, what their base malts were, etc. But I thought that was a really good beer. That was Lone Goose Hoppy Golden Ale on cask from Stranger's Brewing Company. The next night, we went to a sister pub to the Beehive, which is about 3-4 storefronts down, called the White Hart Inn. And the White Hart Inn is also supposed to be really, really old. The history of it, I guess, to Providence goes back 200-300 years. Really cool inside, the ambience, you know, the old wood beams, very small and tight inside. Thankfully, on Grassmarket, what they do with all of these pubs is if you can't get a seat inside, you walk out into the sidewalk, which is about 40 foot deep, and they have seating set up outside. And the way the pubs work over there, by the way, if I didn't mention this, is you always go to the bar to get your beer. You always go to the bar to place your order. And they'll generally have like a table number that you're sitting at, and they'll bring the food to you. But it's bar service, which I like. I like that a lot. I don't need all the rest of the somebody waiting on me with, you know, fancy white cloths and all that crap. I like pub culture. So we're at the White Hart Inn, and the first beer I had was their best bitter on cask. Come to find out, that was brewed by Belhaven as well. So I think Belhaven's got a pretty big footprint over there. That particular bitter was very similar to the best bitter I had over at the Beehive Inn. Won't describe it because I'm sure it's probably the same beer. Pour was great. Anything on cask to me always notches it up a little higher on my likability type of thing. So that was really good. And then I had, which is probably I'm going to say the best beer I had in Scotland, which was Belhaven's Black. And it's a stout. And it was on cask at both of these places. Comes in at 4.2% ABV. It's excellent, rich, smooth, got some of that roasted coffee and chocolate notes to the back of it. I saw some fools drinking Guinness in this place because they had Guinness on tap, not on cask, on tap. And I don't know what they're doing. They should get this one off a cask. This is Belhaven's Black. Exceptional beer. In fact, it was the last beer I had in Scotland was that beer, and it left a warm memory for me. Really enjoyed it. There was one other beer I tried, and this was at a group dinner for our tour group. Last night we were there. It's like the last hurrah before we leave the next morning very early, and that's a Tennant's Brewing Lager. So Tennant's is like Budweiser, Miller, Coors over there. It was good. For a straight lager, I thought it was good. It was crisp. Nothing fancy about it. Came in at 4% ABV, so I could see that why people drink it over there, right? It's like one of those things you go in and meet a few friends, you want to have a few beers, watch a rugby match or football on TV or what have you. Which it brings me to this. That last beer I had, as I said, was the Belhaven Black, that stout. We go in and we've got a couple hours for our group dinner. And I was kind of beered out at this point, but I'm like, you know what? We got a few hours to kill in the afternoon. It was a rainy day. Let's go back over to Beehive Inn. We walk in. They've got all the TV screens in there. We're playing rugby. And I may have watched rugby highlights on SportsCenter before, but I've never actually watched a game. We sat there for about an hour and a half, close to 2 hours watching it, trying to figure out what the hell was happening on the field or pitch or whatever they call it, and drinking this Belhaven Black. It was phenomenal. So at one point, my wife got up and she went up to the bar to ask a question about the scoring in rugby. And turns out one of the bartenders up there had played rugby for about 10 years. He was a lad probably in his late 20s. And I think he probably grew up in school or what they call primary or secondary over there, playing the game. And he was more than happy to describe to my wife everything about rugby. In fact, she was lost at the bar for 45 minutes while I kept drinking. I waved at her one point and she brought me another one. So it was great. The only other beer I had there was at that hotel in Edinburgh. I said, you know what? I'm in Scotland. I've got to try what was kind of one of the biggest and first, as far as I can tell, craft brewing companies in Scotland, and that is Brewdog. Brewdog's in the U.S. too. They're all over the place now. It looks like Brewdog started about 2007 in Scotland. It's a massive, in Aberdeen, Scotland, by the way, which is on the East Coast. It's a massive brewery today. It's a big business type thing. But I had their original IPA, the first one they ever commercially brewed. It was called Punk IPA, so that's Brewdog Punk IPA. I thought it was great. West Coast style, right, which is my jam. I really enjoy West Coast style beers. Had a really nice bitterness to it and a nice malt profile. I would drink that again. In fact, I'll look for that locally now to drink that beer. I thought it was really, really good. So, hey, that's it for the beers of Scotland. Oh, I don't think I mentioned this. The reason why we went to Scotland is my last name and my mom's maiden name are both Scottish. I did a DNA test a few years back. I'm like 51% English and 28% Scottish. So that basically, I probably qualify to be a citizen of Great Britain, right? Who knows? We'll see how things turn out. But we went there for that reason. I think our next place we'll go is Ireland because we've always wanted to go there as well. But if you've never been to Scotland, hey, go. It's phenomenal. I'll leave you with two things that I do in all my videos, and that is support your local tap rooms and breweries, and the struggle is real. Get out there and support your local businesses, right? And your breweries, your tap rooms are those very local businesses. Great people, great beers, and you're going to help them out in a time where everybody in this economy is just trying to make it, right? So support your local tap rooms and breweries. Also, the struggle is real. Whatever you're going through, whatever life challenges you're facing, whatever it is that seems to be a roadblock or obstacle in your way, hey, it's real to you. Don't be shy about it. Talk to somebody, right? Talk to family and friends. If you don't feel comfortable talking to them, seek a professional. I know there's a lot of online services now available for people that are looking for a little bit of help with their mental health. So don't be shy. Take care of yourself. In my world, I kind of believe that you're the only person to take care of you, right? Can't count on other people. Take care of yourself. So support your local breweries and tap rooms, and the struggle is real. My name is Matt. This is Beer, Wood, Bigfoot, Ghost, where I talk about anything to do with those four subjects. Check me out. Please hit the like button, subscribe button. We'll see you the next time. Bye-ya.